everybody. My name's Lauren Cecil. We'll get started here in a second.
Hey, Lauren.
Hi, Lauren.
Hello. Hello.
Dave, you look so lonely in that big conference room all by yourself.
It's very lonely in here. Thank you. Okay.
All right, a couple more seconds. Let's let them get in and joined. Okay, well, we're at 101, so we'll get this started. Thank you all for being here and interested in testifying at the legislature. For those of you who don't know, I'm Lauren Cecil. I'm your Senior Government Affairs Director here at CAR. The GA team, we're gonna divide and conquer these sections. So I'm gonna let them introduce themselves first before we dive in. And just some housekeeping notes. If you're not muted, please mute yourself. I think we're getting some feedback, if you don't mind. Okay, Brian, Jesse, you want to introduce yourselves?
I will go first. Hey, greetings, everybody. It's great to see so many people on this. I know this is something that has been requested, and we're happy to do this. I am happy to share that I think we'll do this again. So we are recording this now, but as we want to fine tune this, we're in the very early days of the 2024 session. That said, there's definitely quite a few bills that are being moved that affect the housing and real estate industry. I am Brian Tanner. I'm your Vice President of Public Policy. I have been with CAR for not even a year, but super excited and have a great team. So I primarily work with our Legislative Policy Committee in CARPAC. So in addition to our government affairs staff team. So that is me in a very quick nutshell. So hopefully Jesse is on and is ready to introduce himself.
Hey everyone, I'm Jesse Zamora, Government Affairs Director here at CAR. I'm going on 2 years here at CAR, so just a pleasure to see you all. Ready for testimony training, something that's vitally important to the legislative process. That's how we get your stories out there, and we make sure that we can advocate effectively on legislation that's impacting the real estate industry. A little bit about me, I came from a municipal lobbying background in Denver, worked mostly with Home Builders Association and Comcast as the primary accounts. And I'm also a Denver native from the Globeville neighborhood.
Great, thanks, Jesse. So this should be fairly straightforward, but if you guys have any questions, we'll have a Q&A portion at the end. You can submit those questions in the Q&A box at the bottom. The purpose of the Zoom is to help guide and educate you all how to testify on your own behalf at the legislature. We are encouraging you to share the same position as CAR, even if you are testifying on your own behalf. And we know that your stories are your own and the talking points might be different, but we are power in numbers with that collective voice. So I'll touch more on that later in the PowerPoint. And just some quick housekeeping notes. Like I mentioned earlier, questions, you can submit them at the bottom, and please keep yourself muted during the presentation. And please be respectful to the presenters and any proposed questions that we might have. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Brian to talk about what is testimony and why we want to do it. And I will also share my screen.
Hey, thank you, Lauren, again. Thank you all for joining here. And this is actually one of the chances that you can use the chat function out there. But I just want to put a finer point on what Lauren just shared about this. We have strength in numbers in terms of our 27,000 realtors from across the state. One of the things I just hope that we are all thoughtful of, as there are a number of bills out there that we may really dislike, we may really love, we may be something that needs to be fixing out there. And I would encourage everybody to look at the CAR position. And if you're not sure like what it is, Lauren will get to the why. But the most important thing I think is that universal collective message. If we have realtors that are testifying in one position and then some that are the other position and some that are somewhere else, The message that it sends to legislators is that we're not unified and that they can practically do almost anything they want. So with that, let's get into what is testimony. So in the chat, please, in your own words, like, what do you think testifying is? So again, at the bottom of your screen, there should be a little chat button out there. Just fire them away. Okay, first one out of the gate, presenting yourself as a subject matter expert in the area of testimony. Opportunity to be a part of the legislative process, answering questions and giving perspective, bearing testimony, stating your vision of facts. Again, keep them coming in terms of, look, this is your chance too. Like, we're in a safe space, so if you're like, I have no idea what testimony is, feel free to share that as well. It's why you're here. Telling of a unified story. Democracy. All right. Keep it coming. I'm going to give you kind of an official sort of what I refer to as a textbook answer, but testimony is a citizen's opportunity to publicly share feedback on a policy for the committee record. More importantly, as some of you have shared, it's your opportunity to take an abstract policy on paper and provide real world experience on how that policy can help or hurt real estate industry, realtors, affect property rights, whatever the issue may be out there. And again, it's your opportunity to provide personalized examples and stories that would help support, oppose, or change a bill through amendments in this democratic process of a public hearing. Again, this is almost every single bill has an opportunity for public hearing out there. It's one of the things. It's only in the final days or hours of session in May where this process becomes very muted in terms of where you start having committee hearings that's what basically in the chamber itself. So just know that every single bill, you're likely to not have just one, but two opportunities, one in the House, one in the Senate, whatever chamber the bill starts in, to share your story. And you can share that exact same experience if the bill hasn't changed in one chamber or the other chamber because your audience is going to be different. So that is quintessential sort of testimony out there. The next question, as we're going to change into the chat, is the why. So I think we might have hinted on this, but again, what is testimony? But now let's really focus on the why. Why should you take time away from your business, time out of your lives to, like, again, give testimony? Again, I'm seeing in here, just as we're scrolling through, sharing information that may be useful to legislators. Again, influencing legislative decisions. Again, great one, Aaron. If you're not at the tables and you're on the menu, to get to a better place, knowledge is power, citizens' voices are heard, real life data that lawmakers need to support or oppose. Again, experience on those individual topics. Look, you are giving some really outstanding examples here in terms of the why. And I want you to hold on to that because, again, we may be asking you to testify or share your experience on some bills out there. And it may take some time, but the why is what really sort of grounds us in terms of us doing this. Again, I see this moment, we don't use our voices, we have no right to complain. Yes, like we gotta be engaged in terms of these pieces out there. Well, look, I'm gonna give you some statistical sort of data in terms of the why. There are 100 legislators in the Capitol. You've got 65 House members, you've got 35 senators. Not a single one of them is a realtor. Now, some of them may have been a licensee at standpoint or done, or some might have a spouse or a family member who's a realtor or who works in the real estate industry in some way, shape, or form, but none of them are you. That is not stopping them from proposing policies that absolutely impact you. So this is part of the why is you are experts in your profession and they should hear from you. The other thing that's super important too is like there's a real syndrome called the Capitol syndrome, where once session starts, these legislators get in this bubble of Denver, of the Capitol. They hear from hundreds of lobbyists and they lose touch back home. It's just kind of like, especially as we get deeper into session, this is your chance to kind of bring them back home and being like, look, I know you spend a lot of time here, but let me tell you how this policy could affect us back in your district, back in our own backyards out there. So again, that's the whys, again, pulling them away from the syndrome, the bubble, giving them some real world examples. And again, this is all to like either help get that bill passed, help defeat it, or help change it in terms of those pieces out there. So that I think is a kind of a good quick snapshot of the what and the why. I do think now I'm going to turn it over to Jesse to get into the more of the procedural aspect of testimony.
Thank you, Brian. Happy to take it over from here. I will be covering the process of testifying at the Colorado legislature. But first, we want to do a poll question. We want to see, how long you think testimony should be or how long it really is. So I will launch that right now. And please feel free to put in your answers. Is it 1 minute? Is it 3 minutes, 5 minutes, or do you have unlimited time to provide testimony? Let us know in the poll, and once we have our respondents total, we'll be able to inform you of what that looks like. So just give it a minute here. We're at 70%, going up to 80. Get your answers in there, everyone. Okay, just a few more. How long do you think we have? Get your answers in there. Doesn't matter. There's no real wrong answer. So let's just go ahead and get those in. All right, looks like the majority has done it. I will end it in 3, 2, 1. Okay, so everyone's answered this question. Do you have 1, 3 minutes, 5 minutes, or unlimited time? Most of you answered 3 minutes, 74% of respondents. And I will tell you right now, while that is generally true, that is not always true, right? So you don't have unlimited time. You do have a time limit at the moment of testimony. And to give an example, while most committees will let you do a 3-minute testimony phase for each panel, or each person gets 3 minutes, the interim committee for what we know as Senate Bill 33 on short-term rentals, they limited testimony to 1 minute per person because there was just so many. We have to remember that legislators are very busy people, and they do have and reserve that right to limit testimony to a very short time frame. So just a fun fact there. I will get this poll down. And then I want to go through what it looks like identifying legislation in committee in order for you to testify. So to sign up for testimony, you have 2 options. You can do in person or you can do virtual. The virtual will be on Zoom. And we'll go over through some do's and don'ts later. But right now I want to share my screen on what that looks like. And so here we go, everyone. One moment. Does everyone see my screen or no? No?
No.
No.
And
How
you,
about
but not your
No.
screen.
Can't see it.
Okay, 1 second. Trying to see what's going on here. Lauren, Brian, my screen's not popping up. I'm getting feedback that we're not seeing it.
I
see it
fine. I don't think you're shared your screen.
We don't see it.
Hmm.
Technology, it's
Yeah,
fun, isn't
sorry,
it?
y'all. Oh, here we go. Finally, it popped up. It wasn't showing. Does everyone see my screen now?
Yes.
All right, perfect. So here's what you want to do. If you want to participate in legislative hearings, there is a process to do that. In the in the legislature's website, you'll be able to navigate to information for the public. And then in this process, you'll be able to see where it is you want to go. So Senate committee room hallway, it gives you where every hallway is for every committee room. It also describes the acronym. So if you see an LSB, that is not inside the building. You have to go across the street on 200 East 14th. So very important that you know where you're going. And then to participate in the public legislative process, here we go. Where is the legislative testimony? I'm sorry, y'all. Anyway. Lauren, did you send the right link? I'm sorry, y'all. I'm not sure where this is going.
Go back up. Go to committees, go to public testimony options.
Yeah, there we go. Public testimony options, everyone. Sorry for that. Anyway, this opens up this page, and here's where you'll see if you want to testify remotely or in written testimony, or doing it in person, or just listening online. If you want to do it in person, select that, or if you want to not do it in person, you can also go to the virtual, which is right here via Zoom, and then you're going to want to search this by the committee's name. You can do it by day or by hearing item. If you know exactly where your bill is, so let's put a bill out there that's out there, 1014, deceptive trade. And so what you would do is you want to go to the hearing item, or you can search for it by the House or Senate committee. Typically, the real estate ones will be in the House, let's see, Transportation and Local Government Committee. Senate is the corresponding one, Senate, Local Government and Housing. A lot of our bills are up in those committees. Just go ahead and select it. And then you will have to look at the schedule for each bill and see when the committee is meeting. And then by that point in time, you will be able to find which bill we're looking at. So one of them is Senate Bill 24. We have this on the state bill, on our legislative tracker, and you're able to find everything you need here. You fill out all this information, your title, first and last name, pronouns, and the position that you're taking on this hearing item. One thing I want to put out there for all of you that want to testify, it really helps if you as Realtor members are communicating the positions that our Legislative Policy Committee has formally adopted. So if we are for a bill, it would be extremely helpful if you are for it as well. If you're not, please, tell the committee that you're testifying on your own behalf. And then what you can do is fill out the position, what you're representing, yourself or the organization, go through the whole gamut, and then you sign up. Save that onto your calendar. That way you're ready to actually testify on the day of. And then also keep in mind that the dates and times can change. The legislature runs on virtually its own calendar, so we don't have control over that. Please stay apprised of it. All right.
Hey, Jesse, just real quick there, staying on the screen here. This is actually really important. So you see that button there where it says representing self or the organization. If we would come to you and ask you about essentially speaking on behalf of CAR. So if we're not coming to you and being like, hey, look, we want you to give the association position out there, then you would almost always be checking that box as self. We're asking you, again, to keep in consideration as to what the CAR position is on a bill, but in terms of that representing, it is you. You are sharing that information on your own behalf. Can I also just share with you, some people do this and it's something that is sort of frowned upon, and this might blur, actually, hold on to that piece. I will save that for another slide on the back end. In terms of what we can do. But again, for the representing, it's going to be yourself unless you talk to somebody from the CAR team staff and we are asking you to testify on behalf of the association.
So there we go, everyone. That is the way to testify remotely. Again, you want to find a nice quiet place to do it. Be flexible with the schedule itself. If you are accessing the Capitol, there are two entrances. The north entrance will have to be on the first floor. You go on the stairs up above. And the south entrance requires that you go underground. And that's where you have to pass through security. it's very much like the airport. You want to be ready to, take off any medals and get through and find the committee room where you're going to be testifying. And then once you're called, that is when you go up to the podium in front of the committee members and be ready to deliver your testimony. Are there any questions? Do we see any questions in the chat? Government Affairs?
I think Brian just addressed one in the chat that everybody can see. I have one. Is virtual impactful like in person? That's a really great question. I'm gonna let Brian answer that one. I'm gonna say in person is probably as best as possible. But obviously being all over the state, if you can testify virtually, that is just a great option as well too. But yeah, Brian, if you want to add more, please do.
Yeah, again, this is for you. What works best for you? Yes, if you can be there, but look, I want to be cognizant and respectful of your time and ask some of you to drive an hour, 2 hours, maybe longer, maybe shorter, to sit and wait on some of these bills. Even us as staff and as professional lobbyists, some of us, we have grown accustomed to testifying on bills from the comfort of our home. So just know that, again, if whatever you can, and if you want, there's a bill that is important enough to you and to shape and we can work together on it, then remote works just as well. Having some time in the Capitol, yes, but just know that both ways are going to be impactful.
Great, thank you. Okay, moving on. Let me get my PowerPoint back up. 1 second. Here we go. Okay, I'm going to discuss how to prepare your testimony. First, so this is, oh no, sorry guys, 1 second. Okay, we're back. So this is once you've been called up to the podium, like Jesse says, and they're ready for your testimony, to prepare your remarks. First and foremost, you should always do your homework and read the bill. And as we mentioned earlier, no CAR's position on the bill, whether you agree with it or not, or just have, whether you agree with it or not, or have multiple, oh my goodness, I'm sorry. I am trying to read notes and also have a different thought in my head. So I'm combining it and I apologize. Whether you agree with it or not, and you also will have different talking points. It is better for us to have that collected voice like we talked about, like we said earlier. If we have multiple realtors testifying and they don't know CAR's position or they're testifying on a different position, the optics aren't going to look great to the legislators at the panel. So we really want to stress the fact that if you do testify on your own behalf, we really would appreciate and encourage you to also share that same position as CAR. And typically there's usually a reasoning behind that, whether it's an amend, monitor, support, oppose. Sometimes it's straight out because of what the bill says, but sometimes there's strategic purposes behind it as well. So if you ever are curious or need to know more information about a bill, feel free to reach out to us at the Government Affairs email address that I put in the chat, and we can put in the chat again. We'll be happy to talk through any talking points, strategy, or anything like that. Mentioned earlier, prepare your remarks to 2 to 3 minutes. Sometimes, depending on the bill, if there's a lot of people that signed up, they will shorten your amount of time. So just be flexible. If this bill was in a committee prior to the committee that you're testifying in, you can go in and hear that committee and listen to the remarks that were already said. It's just a good way to get more history and kind of learn more about the bill. Also, let me make sure I'm going. The notes that you prepare, those will be in person and via Zoom. Those are for your eyes only. So you can scribble on them. No one else at the podium or the legislators, they won't see that. That's all for you. A general outline for testimony, I have it here on the screen. First is a greeting, and then I have an example on the next slide, so I'll get to that once I go through all this. First, when you prepare your remarks, and you write it out, obviously introduce yourself, who you are, put your area expertise, how long you've been in the real estate industry, and why you're here testifying, asking to support, oppose, or amend a bill number. State the problem and give examples. And then most importantly, share your personal experiences. I don't know if you guys saw that. I worked really hard on that for it to come in and try to capture your all's attention. Share your all's personal experiences, because that's really is what's going to hit home to these legislators. If you have data, you can include that, but the reason why I have that in the big POW, I don't even know what that shape is called, but I'm going to call it a POW shape, is because your experiences are really what will, like I said, what will speak to the legislators. Avoid using realtor acronyms. I know in the realtor world, that's easy to use those, GAD, NAR, all that stuff, all your designations. Make sure you spell that out for them, because they're not going to know that unless we get realtor members in the legislature, which hopefully soon we can get some realtor members elected to the legislature. You can also talk about how this will affect other realtors, your clients, and families. Once you get through that, you want to always propose a solution or ask or ask for a specific vote. So in the example, I'll show you how that will work. And then at the very end, just thank them for your time. And then once you do that, there might be a potential Q&A. So once you get done with your testimony, just make sure you stay up there until you're dismissed, unless they have any questions for you. So let me go here to the next slide. There we go. So I hope you guys can see this. This is an example of a testimony that we crafted last year for rent control. The green portion is the introduction. They introduce themselves, say their name. They're here on behalf of CAR and the amount of realtors that we have throughout the state. And we give the reasoning why we are testifying to oppose House Bill 1115, which was rent control. In the purple, it goes into the reasoning that states a problem as to why rent control is bad and provides supplemental information. This is where you can share your personal stories and experiences. And at the end, there's a proposed solution and then a thank you. So in the, I guess, second to last paragraph, it says we should work to capitalize. It talks about focusing resources on another avenue, not going down rent control avenue. And sometimes you may not have a proposed solution. You just want them to vote no for your specific reasons, and or vote yes, and that's fine too. But this is just a good example of how we tailor testimonies here at CAR. So at the very end, it says, please vote no, happy to answer any questions, and then a thank you. So you can close that out. And then, like I mentioned earlier, just make sure once you get done with that, you either wait for any potential questions or they dismiss you from the panel. Because typically there's usually multiple people if you're in person testifying at once. If you're on Zoom, you'll also be on a panel, but you'll be on a panel via Zoom. So you'll know, they'll call your name. Okay. Quick tip. If you want to buy yourself some more time to answer a question, you can ask the legislature to repeat and rephrase their question, and that will allow you more time to collect your thoughts. A lot of lobbyists do this too, just so you can have more time to be thoughtful of your wording and your answer. Another thing is, it's okay to not know an answer to. You can always follow up with the legislators after the testimony, or I'm sorry, after you get done testifying. And then you typically want to wait until the chair recognizes you to answer a proposed question. Other than that, I think that is all that I have for this section right now. We're kind of ahead schedule, so if you guys have any questions, I see the chat. Let me open it real fast. Let me see. I don't see many questions.
Actually, Lauren, can I jump in because I see it a couple of
Sure.
times here?
Okay.
This is something that came out, and again, we are working on right now our comms. On our website, on the CAR website, we will have a link to state bills. So you see some questions in here about in terms of the bill tracker list. So you'll have that information once we get that posted and that widget up on our website. For those, and this is kind of like a behind the scenes, is we had to renew our subscription to the bill tracking service that we have been using for a number of years. In that process, we lost all of our previous session bills and have had to recreate all of our reports, all of our tracking mechanisms. So it's been a rebuilding process for the last couple of weeks as bills are coming online. So again, once it gets out, again, all of you that have registered for this, we'll email out that link in terms of like, here's the link on our website to all of the bills that are in our orbit that we're either, again, have an active position, if we're monitoring all of the pieces of the Legislative Policy Committee that have taken action on a bill out there. So, and again, if there's something that's not on that sheet that you have a question about, then again, please feel free to reach out to us at GovAffairs@Colorado Realtors. That's also going to be your go-to email address for right now. So if there's a bill out there that you've been hearing about or have questions about, again, please email us. We have multiple eyes on the email inbox, and we'll get to that. Actually, this is a good question. There's a question about testifying. Can we state we are testifying on our own behalf and member of CAR and support their position? This is actually kind of bleeds into the do's and don'ts a little bit, but feel free to say that you're a realtor, that you've been a realtor for a certain number of years, whether it's been 6 months or 25 years. I think that alone gives weight to the position. And again, if you're saying like, hey, I'm here to encourage you to amend this bill, and this is why problem solution pieces out there, again, the committee will know our position as an association. We will be very clear, and they will know that. So it helps reinforce that position. If you just say like, I am here individually as a realtor to ask you to support this bill or whatever the position may be. So good question in the chat. Thank you.
Thanks, Brian. There was another question in the Q&A from Joanne. What advice if you are testifying on technical language or other profession requirements? My personal advice is try to explain it as quickly and as simple as you can, if possible, because you have 2 to 3 minutes, so you want to make use of your time. But again, if you do have to talk about something that requires technical language or anything like that, you can always feel free to explain it as well while you testify. So thank you for the question. Okay, next one is Jesse with the do's and don'ts.
Thank you, Lauren. And as Lauren already covered some of the do's and don'ts of testimony, I do want to provide you a comprehensive checklist of things you should do and things you should not do when you're at that stage of testimony. So to begin with, you want to write out your testimony and all your notes, print it out and copy. You want to have it in front of you to speak in front of. So a lot of folks think that you have to simply provide it off the cuff or on your mind. No, you don't. You can write it down in any format that you want, whether it's completely verbatim in a very polished and scripted format, or if you just have bullet points, you can use that to your advantage to make sure your testimony is concise and clear. So we really encourage that you print that out and have that ready the day of. If you are adding that into the record, as far as the written form of it, you can also do that too. Make sure you address it properly to the committee if you are also providing that written form. You want to practice as well prior to providing testimony. As we already covered, you might have 1 minute, typically 3 minutes to provide your piece. So you want to make sure you're concise, clear, state that position from the get-go. Who you're representing. Is it yourself or an organization? And if it's not for an organization, definitely include points about who you are, what you bring to the table, what you're seeing on the ground. That really does provide that personal note that makes a real impact, really, at that stage of the legislative process. Once you're done with testimony, the 3 minutes are up. Usually they go in a panel. Say you're 3 out of 5, you have to wait until the whole panel is done providing their testimony. At that point, you must wait for the committee chair to excuse you. You do not get up earlier if you're in person, or if you're virtual, you don't get off the Zoom call until you are called off as a witness, because typically these go in groups. You're going to want to wait until the chair gives you the cue to say, okay, the panel is now dismissed. Thank you for all of your input and so forth, but not before questions. So once, say, for in this example, let's put 5 witnesses. Once they're done, they open it up to questions. Stay there for the entirety of the questioning period. Okay, they might have a question for you. And if you don't know the answer, it's okay to say you don't know, or that you'll get back to them. The last thing you want to do is provide information that is not accurate or that isn't factually true. You want to make sure you're reliable as can be. And that might mean getting back to them via email in a way that they request. So make sure you're ready for that. And also, don't lie or make promises you can't keep. Every promise that you make at that stage needs to be 100% backed up by you or your organization. You're going to have deliverables if you promise to provide information. And if you are, say, a Realtor member, as we're providing information to you today, but you don't have all the information that you need and you provide a testimony, you have state staff on your side. Reach out to Brian, reach out to Lauren, reach out to myself. We'll provide you with some of the data and stats that you need to formulate and strengthen your argument before you provide testimony or in some of the follow-ups that come afterward. So please let us know. You can always reach us at the govaffairs@coloradorealtors.com email. That is not a hollow email. I'm actively monitoring that, and I get back to everyone personally. We take great pride in making sure we answer our members' questions. And just remember that testimony is public, that it is on public record. How you represent yourself reflects on you. So keep that in mind. And then more importantly, be relaxed and open-minded. Not everyone has the same viewpoint. You are allowed to share your experience in its entirety, and be respectful. The respectful piece is critically important. There's a lot of people that come in passionate and very, very much on the side of something. But the right approach is to be respectful at all times and use a tone of voice that communicates your message. You don't want to come off as too highly passionate. You want these people to listen to you. And that comes off first and foremost with basic rules, right? And that means being respectful of each other and having a respect of their time, because they're there all day and all night hearing people as part of their public obligation. And then I think last but not least, dress to impress. You want to be taken seriously. In the Capitol, I will say there is a culture of business attire. It's a public building. You can show up however you want, and I've seen all of it. But for us, it's extremely important to know and to respect the legislators' time, and we want to make sure that they know we're here on business. So please be aware of that. And another do on Zoom, if you are on Zoom and providing your testimony there, silence your phone, put it on airplane mode. Make sure no one's going to bother you or interrupt you in that moment, because at that point, it's all recorded. It's all going to be stored in public record. Make sure you leave a lasting impression. And with those points, I will take any questions and open it up to government affairs staff to take questions on the chat or however you can. So please drop those in the
Jesse?
chat. Yeah.
Yeah, please use the chat, and there's some good questions we'll get to. But I'm going to share just a couple more tips or experiences from what I've seen. One of the things as you are writing your testimony, because again, I think most of us that have been in the Capitol are people who speak on behalf of all taxpayers. I am speaking on behalf of everybody who's not here. Please don't do that. Please use I statements. This is who I am. This is what I do. I have witnessed this. I believe this. Those are statements that, from a legislative standpoint, are just hard to challenge. If you're giving your experience in terms of how it relates to a bill, that is something that is just, stats and figures open up things, but if you give context to those things out there and you share your experience working with a customer or a client in terms of low inventory and why we need policies in terms of increasing inventory, those are powerful tools to help legislators. And in terms of that piece of like using it to influence and move them on decisions. I'm going to get back to something else, again, to some of the mechanics out there. So I see a lot of questions in the chat out there. Look, again, as I said earlier, as we're working with our communications team to get that widget up on our website, we will email it out to everybody who RSVP'd for this testimony training out there. So again, we're government affairs staff. We don't control our website. So this is the piece. And that's the other thing too. So I see some great things in terms of like how we can be support. All of us on the team are more than happy to like look over testimony, give you feedback, and let you know, like, have you thought about this or have you thought about that? Are some big pieces. Again, I saw in the chat about, do they ever read written testimony? I will say this, anytime you submit an actual written testimony for the record, it goes into a bill folder. So every legislator like has literally a hard copy manila folder of bills. So all of those emails you send, written testimony will go in there. Typically staff will review them. And I will say this, the other thing too is like, if you're a constituent, it has greater priority than if you're not a constituent. So that's where the written testimony piece is out there. But typically it's the verbal, give that position, give that experience. Hopefully that legislators will hold on to a nugget of your story and experience to then talk to their caucus members or to help them in terms of voting on the bill. In terms of like the widget on the website too, it will give you some quick talking points. Like, of course, we want to explain why we are recommending a bill position. And so there's a question about what exactly is a bill position. The positions that you will see are going to be like, we support a bill. We think this bill is good. And again, the legislature should pass this and make it statewide in terms of statutory change. We oppose it. This is a bad bill that's unfixable. Rent control was the big one last year that we helped defeat because like this is just unfixable and it will hurt the market. The one that is very common that you all will probably see quite a bit once the widget is up and running is a position called amend. And amend means it's a change, like something needs to change on it that the current bill, whether it's introduced or been amended already, is not okay as is. And there need to be changes out there. Because of the dynamic in the legislature now, it's a Democratic majority. It's a super majority in the House of 46 Democrats and 19 Republicans. It is a near super majority in the Senate of 23 Democrats and 12 Republicans. Those are the big pieces. So that is where this amend, you'll see that. The other positions monitor, where we are essentially observing and watching and tracking a bill go through, but we're just monitoring it to make sure that nothing out there sort of changes. So those are the bill positions. Those are just some of the quick things in terms of how you should structure your testimony. And again, I'll kick it over to staff as I have not been paying attention to the chat for the last couple minutes.
Thanks, Brian. Yeah, no, there's some great questions in there. Regina had one, if we were doing this for the first time, would we be willing to read the statement before testifying? Absolutely. Happy to run through any thoughts, testimony notes you have with you. And next one is from Hillary. Is it possible there are too many people who want to testify and would not let us all share? Hillary, they would let you share, short answer. Long answer is sometimes there are hundreds of people that sign up and it will take hours. So sometimes you just have to be patient and just wait till your name is called, unfortunately, but that is something that happens on these high profile bills. And that was something that we ran into last year with rent control. So.
And you will hear committee chairs being like, if you haven't testified, rather than cover ground, can you cover something new? Is there something new to add to the discussion and dialogue? You will hear that for these large, big bills, but just as what's been shared, every single one of you has that opportunity. Now they might start shortening testimony from 3 minutes to hopefully not a minute, which is just unreal. But just again, it's about being flexible and adaptable. And again, you have your script, you have your testimony. You can cross things off if you need to like shorten your testimony down to 2 minutes.
Great. Well, those are some great questions, and we'll try to get to some more if there is more after. We have, I'm sure I accidentally clicked the slide too soon, so I'm sure you already saw who was about to talk, but Lisa Nguyen, she's going to give her personal experience on her testifying last year. So Lisa, I will give it to you.
Hey everybody, can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Hi, everybody. My name is Lisa Nguyen, and I testified last year on the rent control bill and wanted to share my experience. To be honest, I've been doing public speaking for about 7 years, and testifying is a lot scarier than public speaking. It is a whole new realm that is just a whole new level and a different type of experience. I happened to do my testimony on Zoom, and I was grateful that I was able to do that first set on Zoom. And a couple of the tips and things that I learned in the process was that, sometimes with these bills, you're working fast or things could be brought to you and you may not have a ton of time to prepare. And so you need to practice, even if it's like the day before, a couple days before, you need to rehearse. So if they say there's 2 minutes, there will be a stop clock up with counting down, literally. So what I did in advance was I read everything over and over and over. And if I knew there was a word I was going to stumble on, I would practice that word until I perfected that word in the testimony. But I made sure that as I was practicing, I timed myself because there could be a script, right? And the way that you deliver that script could go longer and they'll cut you off at that time. I mean, they'll try to be polite, but everybody's watching their clocks at that time. In this specific testimony, there was about 200 people. So it was like 10 hours, as you can imagine, after they hear person after person, they're not going to be as empathetic if you're going over your time. And that's something that you can control, is making sure that you don't stumble on your words, that you're exact on your time. Another thing that I did is if you're able to testify on Zoom, I actually had multiple screens up. So I had sticky notes up, like what I'm doing now, actually, while I'm showing you guys is I write down the key points. I have the testimony, but I also write down some words that'll help you remember in the case that you get nervous as you're going through the testimony. And in the rent control case that I testified in specifically, if I was speaking about a certain case in, let's say, Massachusetts or St. Paul, what I did was I actually pulled up that case study on my screen because there is an advantage when you're on Zoom. So I had the actual case study opened and I studied those and did research. So, as you're giving out factual data, you want to do research on what you're talking about. In the case the senator or somebody asks you to, hey, can you please elaborate on that case study? And so I was preparing for their questions in advance by looking at the actual case study, knowing when it was, what the facts were, the high level overview. So in the case that they did ask me about that I'd be prepared to answer that question. Like Lauren said earlier, you can also repeat the question, but on Zoom, there's a huge advantage. You can have your notes in front of you, your testimony, and you can have all the case studies opened up on different screens to prepare. Another thing is, instead of rent control, we were proposing Proposition 123, right? So I was saying that in my testimony, and that was another thing that I needed to research prior. So if they say, okay, elaborate on what Proposition 123 is, it's not enough to just say it. You need to make sure that you know what you're talking about in that regards. Another part is that, you be human. Yes, come in as a professional, but be as human as possible. So in the middle of the testimony, I threw in the fact that my family was refugees from Vietnam. My parents lived in the housing projects right there in Denver, Colorado. I come from and represent underserved communities, which was actually difficult in testifying because I was going against a lot of what the communities were lobbying. But I stuck to the factual data and was trying to explain that what I was using was actual facts and that this wasn't going to help my community. So sometimes as you're testifying, you're going to have to know that it's going to be really hard. You're going to go against even your own community sometimes for the greater good of everybody. And one more thing, like if I say I was representing ARIA, I do actually I went to one of the founders and I asked him, hey, what's your stance on rent control? Well, ARIA supports and has the same stance as CAR. So that's good, right? So I make sure that if I'm referencing organizations that I'm in, that they also are on the same page with that. And then whatever you testify, and one thing that I've learned from being on different boards and is that whatever we decide together, we have to go in together. And that final decision is how we move forward. So if we're all in agreement with something, whether or not you agree or you disagree, whatever hat that you have on, if I have on my car hat that day, whether I agree or whether I disagree, we're all coming collectively together for the greater good of something else. And so that has forced me to make sure that I'm always wearing the hat of what I'm testifying for, or wearing the hat of the organization in which I'm representing, and not my actual feelings about it, because a lot of the testimony is factual data. And so I kept reiterating, these are facts, these are case studies of where this has been done and this has not been good. And so to wrap everything up, prepare your time, make sure you're sticking to the allotted amount of time that you have. If you're on Zoom, pull up multiple screens, put down notes, put sticky notes. I always have keywords for when I get nervous to look at that keyword so I can reference back. And if I start to stumble, that word will put me back on track with where I need to be. Be human. At the end of the day, we're all human beings, whether you're a professional, regardless of what community you come from, stick to the human side of it. And then just know that sometimes your testimony may not be popular, and that's okay. That is okay. And I think that's my tips, but if you guys ever need to pick my brain or chat with me about how that was, the first time was very nerve-wracking, but if I had to do it again, I feel much more prepared this time, and be more than willing to help anybody if you need to testify.
Thank you, Lisa. So that is all we have for our program outline for you. If you have any further questions, this is your time to ask. We know this is a lot of information, so we'll definitely send up some follow-up after the Zoom. And then you always feel free to email us at govaffairs@coloradorealtors.com. So with that, any questions?
Hey, Lauren, before we get again, I think there's some in the Q&A and there's some in the chat as well.
Okay.
This happens, this can happen quite a bit too in terms of getting asked questions, and just a little tip about that. One of the things we talk about is credibility. And again, you saw the slide that Jesse had earlier about the truth lie meter there. Look, for some of these legislators, we spend years building up credibility and trust. It takes 30 seconds to lose that if you are giving inaccurate data or some figures out there. Please know it is more than okay to be like, look, that's a great question. I don't have the answer here in front of me, but I will get back to you with that. In fact, that might want to be your starting point if you ever feel like you're worried about the question part. No matter what the question is, being like, great question, I will get back to you, because right now I'm really centered on my testimony and focused on that. The questions are throwing me off. So be comfortable and just know that that is an absolutely accessible answer to come back, or to ask them to rephrase that. Look, professional lobbyists do it all the time. It is a go-to, and it actually gives us a chance to go back to a legislator. If for some reason you're testifying on a bill and you get asked a question that is kind of tactical in nature, and again, hopefully the plan will be, we'll have either a lobbyist or car staff, but again, email us. Being like, hey, Brian, hey, Lauren, hey, Jesse, I got asked this question. Again, I testified on this bill, but I got asked this question that I don't know the answer to. Can you help me? So as car staff, we're here to help support you. We're not expecting, as you are experts in the field, we're not expecting you to know absolutely everything regarding public policy out there. So a couple of things. And again, I don't know if we got to all the stuff in the Q&A or not, but there we go.
I just did a quick scroll, and I don't see any in the Q&A that we haven't answered. And if there is and we haven't answered, you apologize. We still have technically 6 minutes if you want to ask it now. If not, we can give you 5 minutes back in your day. So wonderful. Well, I appreciate you all attending and being interested in testifying. It is really a great, it is like Lisa said, it can be scary, but it's a great feeling once you do it. So awesome. Well, thanks y'all. Bye. Have a great day.